Hello and welcome, fellow bookworms and film fans. It's time for another episode of The Contented Narrative. Now, in this week's episode, I shall be looking at Fight Club. Now, this was written by, and I'm probably going to say his name wrong, Chuck Palahniuk. I'm never going to need to say that name again, so that's absolutely fine. Now, it was published in 1996, and then it was made into a film, and it was released in 1999. Now, I know the first rule about Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club, and in fact, the second rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club. So I will be breaking rules 1 and 2 of Fight Club today as we discuss it in its entirety. So do bear in mind that there will be spoilers within this episode. Now, not only that, but I have decided to change it up a bit. So we will no longer be rating on 5 things. We're now rating on 4 things. So what we will rate on is plot. We're still going to have a look at that. But we're also going to rate the book overall, how well it is. We're going to rate the film overall. And then we're going to rate how well the film has captured the nuances of the book on the screen. And we'll see how well this goes for the next couple of episodes. If people aren't happy with that, I will switch it back to the original one. I just thought I'd go in for a bit of a change. So the first thing that we'll be looking at today is the plot of the book. Now, it's I'm going to try and explain the plot as I go along. I didn't properly understand it in parts, so do bear with me. And if at any point you don't understand what I'm saying, just tune out and then tune back in on something that you do. So the plot of the book and the film are very, very similar. They both start in very much the same way. You meet Tyler Durden and the narrator. Now, the narrator you meet first. You meet him. So you meet Tyler Durden and the narrator sort of like at the end of their story, as it were. And then it goes back to the beginning of the story and how they ended up where they were. Now, the narrator goes to groups and meetings because he's got insomnia. So he goes to meetings, so for example, Remaining Men Together, which is about testicular cancer, goes to one about brain parasites, and cancer and things like that, because he finds that being able to cry and being able to sort of like just let him go completely means that he can then sleep. Because he goes to a doctor and he says that he's got insomnia, and the doctor just says, chew on some valerian root, you're absolutely fine, you're going to be all right. So he then ends up just sort of like at this Remaining Men Together where he meets Bob, and he ends up crying into Bob, and then he has the best night's sleep he's ever had in his life. So he decides to keep going there. Now, that is where he meets Marla. Now, I do feel sorry for Marla, like really sorry for Marla, and you will find out later as to why. I completely feel for her. But when he meets Marla, he realises that she's a faker. And of course he's a faker, don't let that fool you. But he's just like, oh, she's a faker, she doesn't even have any of this. She's in the Remaining Men Together and she doesn't even have, the men parts to be able to have testicular cancer. So he then can't, cry, and he can't then sleep at night, and he starts getting insomnia again. So he starts trying to sort of like push her out, as it were. So he confronts her. They then split up the meetings. He takes certain ones, she takes certain ones, and then they go their separate ways. But then you've got, so Marla and the narrator share the groups, and the narrator is someone that travels for work. So what he does is he's an insurance person, and if there's a car accident that's to do with their car manufacturer, he'll fly out there and he'll assess why it's happened. He even explains as well that if the cost of a recall is more than it would to cost if there was a lawsuit, they won't recall the cars. So he sort of has to go out and assess if the cost is higher for a recall or for a lawsuit, which that can get you down, to be perfectly honest. If that was your job, if you had to figure out if it would be cheaper for a lawsuit for someone's family that's just lost someone they loved, or to recall the cars to save someone's life, I can imagine that would play on him. That would completely play on him. But so that's his job, and he flies around everywhere, and he keeps mentioning that he's got like one-time uses, so one-time friends, one-time sachets, and one-time food, and one-time little cup of coffee, and everything like that. And this is how he meets Tyler. Now, in the film, he meets Tyler on the plane, and Tyler brings out this briefcase and he shows that he's selling soaps. In the book, he meets Tyler on a nudist beach. that's just how he meets him. And Tyler's described as putting up these big logs in certain ways so that when the sun hits at the right moment, it looks like a hand. So that's how he meets Tyler. So then the narrator comes back home. His baggage gets kept behind at an airport because it was vibrating. Now, they said, 9 times out of 10 it's a razor, but that 10th time it's and then I'm not going to say it because this is a polite channel, but anyone that's seen Fight Club or read Fight Club knows exactly what it is they say next. So anyway, he then goes off to back to his condo, and there's fire trucks there, and his condo has blown up. So his flat is completely gone. He's got nowhere to go. In the film, he tries to call Marla first, but then doesn't go through with it. Then he calls Tyler, doesn't get a reply, is about to walk away, and then the phone rings and he gets a reply. And then he says, do you want to meet up for a drink? In the book, it's a lot quicker than that. He calls Tyler straight away. Tyler meets up with him, and then they say, can I move in with you? Yep. And then Fight Club starts. Now, Fight Club starts because Tyler is convinced that to be a man, you need to be in at least one fight in your life, and wants the narrator to hit him as hard as he can. And he does. And then they start a fight, and then they go back and they do it again, and they do it again, and they start this like little group of people that end up meeting and realizing that this is sort of like what they do, and then you get Fight Club. And it's quite funny because obviously, as I said, the first and second rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club. However, it keeps growing, so somebody's saying something somewhere, okay? And it's not just me. So you then have the way that Tyler meets Marla. So Marla calls the narrator and says that she's on the verge of, killing herself. She's taken all these tablets, and it might just be a cry for help, but she's not sure if she'll survive. The narrator just goes, yeah, fine, whatever, leaves the phone and walks off. Tyler hears Marla on the other end of the phone and rushes over to help her. They then end up in a relationship, and then they're never in the same room together. And so the narrator gets annoyed because he's got Marla on one hand, Tyler on the other, and Tyler doesn't want the narrator to talk to Marla about Tyler, and Marla tries to talk to the narrator, but he's not having any of it because he finds her an inconvenience. Again, I'm feeling very sorry for Marla, but you will find out later. Now, the narrative in the book is a little bit more jumbled. It's not as linear as the film is. So at times, the plot is pretty much the same, but there are times when things do happen later on in the books than they do in the film. And they still happen, but also there's bits in the film that sort of happen earlier and bits that don't quite go the way it is. But so far, it's been quite a spot-on narrative. So in both narratives, the narrator learns how to make soup. Now, in the film, they initially get the fat needed to make soap from, makes me feel a little bit sick, can't watch that scene, from a liposuction place. Excuse me. And they say that the best fat for making soap is from humans. Lovely. Remember that if you ever want to make soap. In the book, it's not as nasty until right at the end, and then they end up using human fat. I think they use Marla's mum's fat that she's saving for collagen injections. But anyway, so it's lovely. But in both, the narrator gets burnt by lye, because lye is sort of like I'm probably going to be wrong in regards to sort of like you scientists out there, but it is an acid, I think, and you put it onto the skin and it will burn through your skin, and vinegar is what will neutralize it. So Tyler puts the lye onto the narrator's skin and won't neutralize it until the narrator has realized that he's going down. He doesn't need everything in his life, and he needs Tyler and all of that. And it's a bit hard to watch. And then it looks in the shape of a kiss, which is in the book is explained because Tyler kisses the skin beforehand, because saliva helps lye stick to the skin more, whereas in the film it just happens to look like that. So you've got that burn from lye, which is exactly the same in both narratives. Now in the book, you've got a more in-depth description of what Tyler does to the food. So he works in 2 jobs. He works as a projectionist, cannot say the word, He works as a film projector person, and he splices images of pornography into kids and family films. But he also works as a waiter, and he desecrates food, basically. Now, they go into such an in-depth of what they do to the food in the book, and don't read that if you're about to eat ever in the next week. It is very in-depth. Just thinking about it is making me feel a little bit sick. But yeah, so he works those two jobs, and then you end up realizing that the narrator has ended up working in the restaurant with them as well. Now, so the book finally gets around to using fat for making soap, and they do use Marla's mother's fat that Marla was saving for collagen injections to make her lips fatter. So that's lovely, because nothing says I love you like the fat of your mother. Now, in both, you've got the Fight Club has reached loads of other places. It goes on different nights, and it's become sort of like not out of control, but what started off sort of like their little Fight Club has just sort of spread everywhere. And I said, if you've started something, it's quite nice to know that it's going on elsewhere, and you realise that it is starting to get, and as he mentions in the book and as he mentions in the film as well, that you see people on the day-to-day street that have like black eyes or bruises or whatever, and you've seen them at Fight Club the night before, and you want to say that well done, great fight, but it's not who they are during the day. You can't congratulate them on that fight if they've won, or commiserations if they've lost. You can't even really acknowledge them, but you see more and more people, and you realise that actually Fight Club has gone through to a lot of people in a lot of different industries, and you're seeing them everywhere, basically. Now, I mentioned briefly earlier that Tyler's other job is a movie film person, and he splices images of pornography into kids' films. So what happens is, in the film, what happens is the narrator realizes that he wants to just carry on with Fight Club and nothing but Fight Club. So he goes into his boss's office after there's been a couple of little confrontations outside the office, and he says, look, if you don't want me to tell the board about the defective brakes, about the lever that makes people infertile, or this windshield wiper that kills people if they end up in a crash, you're going to give me full paycheck and you'll never have to see me again. Then he goes and beats himself up as the manager is calling security. So when security walk through the door, they see a beaten down narrator and the manager stood above him. So he gets, funnily enough, full pay, and he never has to go back again. In the book, however, Tyler goes in to the movie projectionist's office, and the guy says, right, I'm really sorry, we're going to have to let you go. And so Tyler says, that's absolutely fine, but you are going to give me a full paycheck every week for the rest of forever, basically. And the projectionist's like, why? And he turns around and it's like, well, because I've been slicing these images of porn into all these family films and all of this, and unless you want to recall it all, which is going to cost you a fortune, or deal with the lawsuits when it goes be made public, you're going to be paying me my check. Now, the projectionist then beats the holy hell out of Tyler, but Tyler gets what he wants. And then you go into the waiter side, and Tyler and the narrator are asking for full paychecks from there, saying, look, this is what we've done to the food. This is a full list of everything we've done to the food. We're going to release it to the public unless you give us full paychecks, keep us on the staff, but never call us in. And again, it's sort of like, I believe the narrator then starts beating himself up in that, and the security come, see him beat up, and then they get full paychecks, which is, that's lovely, isn't it? If only we could all do that, really. Now you come across Project Mayhem. Now, in the film, it's slightly different. In the film, they sort of believe that they just want to blow up these credit card companies when nobody's in them, and they want to cause like little mayhem here and there, hence Project Mayhem. So for example, they desecrate popular museum artifacts, they get rid of chain stores, they believe that consumerism is evil and all of that. But the main thing is they want to wipe clear the credit card debt to set everybody free. In the book, they seem a lot more vindictive and they seem a lot more dangerous as well. They want to break down civilization to what it is, like the bare bones, and then work again from the bottom. Now, that's absolutely fine if that's what they want to do. But in the book, they've got like different factions within Project Mayhem, whereas in the film, it's just sort of like just one big group of people. In the book, it's sort of like on different nights. These are when different parts of Project Mayhem get together, and they do unleash mayhem. They really do. Now, the admission to the final stage of Project Mayhem is pretty much the same in the book as it is in the film. So you have to stand on the porch for 3 days. You cannot eat, sleep, move, anything like that. After those 3 days, you're allowed in the house. Exactly the same in both narratives. And it's a little bit grueling to watch and especially read when they're just sort of like being beaten with a broom and being like, get off, you're too old, you're too young, you're too fat, whatever. But these people are determined, so fair play to them. If they wanted to get in, they've got in now. So you then get the part where Tyler keeps disappearing for long periods of time. So the narrator is then trying to find Tyler. So he goes to other fight clubs and he starts, each time he's asking the leader, have you seen Tyler? He goes, no, sir, I have not seen Tyler. Wink. And it's just like, sorry, have you seen Tyler or have you not seen Tyler? It's a simple yes or no question. So in the film, Tyler is sort of like missing and the narrator tries to find Tyler by flying after him on these 3 air miles that he's got from work to try and find out where he is. And every time he gets to a new place, again, they do the same thing, oh, I haven't seen Tyler, wink. And it's just like, for the love of God, have you or have you not seen Tyler? Just simply say yes or no to me. So the scene in the film where Tyler threatens to kill someone unless he goes back to veterinary school and becomes a vet is very slightly different in the book. So in the film, it's Tyler and the narrator threatening this guy, saying, go back to veterinary school, make yourself, I'm keeping this driving license, I've got your name, your address and everything like that. If I'm going to check up on you and you're not doing what you said you would, I'm going to kill you. In the book, it's just the narrator that does this. Tyler's nowhere near it. So the narrator threatens him, is supposed to kill him, tells him, no, you need to go off and make something of your life. Again, it's a little difference, but it's enough of a difference to mention. So the narrator still has his job at this point in the book. And he is travelling with his job in the book because he's trying to find Tyler who's gone AWOL. Now, in one of the bars he visits, the narrator gets told he is Tyler Durden. Dun, dun, dun. I honestly, I'm not gonna lie, I love murder mysteries. I love whodunits. And I did not see this coming until it actually was announced. And the minute it was announced, I was like, no. So I was quite impressed that they managed to sort of keep it quiet. So anyway, he then calls Marla to confirm. She gets really pissed off with him and just like, of course you're Tyler, what are you playing at? And then this is the same in both. Now can you see why I said I feel sorry for Marla? Because obviously she's in a relationship with Tyler Durden, who is the narrator, but the narrator is refusing to acknowledge her at certain points and he's getting annoyed with her and doesn't want anything to do with her. But then at other points he's in a full-on relationship where, they're both in bed together for long hours of the day. So it's sort of like she can't quite figure out where she stands and she can't figure out if it's a joke that she's a part of or anything like that. So I've always felt sorry for Marla because she does get the bad end of the stick there, really, doesn't she? So the bit with the police commissioner getting threatened, and where he gets threatened, where his man bits are gonna get cut off. Not all of his man bits, just the little round man bits are gonna get cut off. It's slightly different in both. So in the book, he is out with a walk with his dog and then he gets ambushed. In the film, he's in a like a banquet and he gets ambushed going to the toilet. Now in the film, it's a lot earlier than it is in the book, but it still happens, which is why I've brought it in. Now in both the film and the book, Bob dies. Nice, sweet, innocent little Bob. It's slightly different how he dies. In the book, he dies because he gets shot trying to tamper with a what's it called? Telephone. And in the film, it's because he's messing with something and he gets shot. But then the narrator realizes he's Tyler Durden. In both, he then tries to shut down Fight Club and it doesn't work. Now, in the book, the narrator comes clean to Marla and she helps trying to keep him awake. And in the film, the narrator pushes her away, gives her money, and puts her on a bus to anywhere. So the narrative starts to separate a bit here. So in the book, his work is blown up, and then men from Project Mayhem threaten to remove his own man bits. And in the film, nothing happens to his work, but as he goes to the police to warn about possible explosions, a few police officers who are part of Project Mayhem try to remove his man bits. They're obsessed with removing man bits, don't know why. Now, Marla in the book sees Tyler kill someone, so the narrator tells her to be careful as she might be on a watch list for Project Mayhem now. Now, at the end of the film, the narrator shoots himself and gets rid of Tyler, and the final shot is buildings exploding to the song Where Is My Mind by the Pixies, which is a beautiful shot. Him and Marla are going to run away happy and everything like that. The end of the book, it ends with Marla coming in with all the support groups that they both went to, and nothing blows up, but the narrator kills himself to get rid of Tyler. So the scripting of the film is almost completely what you read in the book. Now, down to thoughts that cross the narrator's mind, and apart from the book being a little non-linear in the storytelling, it is very close plot-wise, very close. So I'm willing to give it a 7 out of 10. Now, the film. The film, I would recommend this film to anyone. It took me years to finally get around to watching it. When you find out the twist at the end, as I said, I've rewatched the film and I still can't figure out. It's so brilliantly done. I still can't see the twist coming, even though I know it's coming. And as I said, David Fincher has directed the film extremely well. I love whodunits, and I could not figure this one out. Now, you honestly believe that the narrator and Tyler Durden are two completely different people right up until the point where they're not. The casting was superb. Helen Bonham Carter as Marla, and when you realise that obviously she's dating the same person and she gets put through a lot of crap, I do appreciate her and her acting. Brad Pitt as Tyler Durden was fantastically done, and I would recommend this film to absolutely anyone. So it's a 9 out of 10 for would I recommend the film. Now, would I recommend the book? I really enjoyed the book. Now, I've never read it before a few days ago, and the story is very good. Now, it sometimes is a little bit confusing, so sometimes I found that once or twice I was rereading a chapter or so, but I managed to read it in one day, which, if I love a book, I will not put it down, and I was quite in love with this book. And if you love books that have like twists and turns and is a dark comedy but with hints of drama and action, this is a fantastic book for you, and I would recommend picking it up. I got mine off eBay secondhand for £2, and I honestly love it, absolutely love it. Now, it is an 8 out of 10 for if I would recommend the book. I would 100% recommend the book. So overall, the plot was very spot on. It was almost word for word at scripting at points. The setting of the book is exactly the same, and the characters and how they're presented on screen are beautifully done, and they're very well cast and they're very well embodied. I believe it was a very close and faithful adaptation. Therefore, the final rating there is a 9 out of 10 for me. Now, this is, as I say every week, this is my own opinion. If for whatever reason you disagree with anything I've said or you agree with anything I've said, leave a comment below. Don't forget to click subscribe to my channel so you're alerted whenever there's a new video out. And do like this video if you did appreciate the content in it. Now, if there's any book to film adaptations you'd like me to have a look at, as I said, I've got a bit of a list, but I am working through it as quick as I can. This one was asked for by Emma McDonald, bless her heart. So there we go, Emma. Now, do leave it below in the comments if you'd like any put on the screen. Now, join me next week for my contented narrative around Caging Skies, which is what the film Jojo Rabbit is based on. So don't forget to join me then. But until then, remember to always keep it contento.